Totally Football Show. Today, we're talking Super Cup surprises, Spurs looking special on set pieces, less on spot kicks, plus Premier League preview, part 2, the mouth-watering return of the Mackems and Everton's old-school new look, why we're less excited about Man United, and most of all, which letter will have fewer Premier League sides beginning with it in 9 months' time. B&W, both strong contenders there. All that and more in this Totally Football Show. Thursday the 14th of August, only got about 24 hours of summer left, everyone, because Liverpool-Bournemouth is kicking off tomorrow night as we record. We've got Daniel's Story of the Eye, Tim Spiers. All right, Tim.
Hi, James.
All right. There is a lot of football on, Tom, and it all starts Friday night. And today we're here to talk about the rest of the Premier League. Check on the promoted sides. Can they finish higher than Man United? All those kind of questions. We're also going to react to that remarkable game played Wednesday night in Udine, the European Super Cup, Spurs against PSG. Wow. Get some L'Equipe player ratings, maybe. Hey, Tom. I noticed that The Athletic has now published its Hopeometer. If you listen to Tuesday's first part of our Premier League preview, we were talking about Newcastle fans being the most pessimistic, which they are by a country mile in the Premier League. The team on the top, I now read, are Chelsea. They have the most optimistic fans of any of the 20 sides. Behind them, Liverpool, which I guess makes sense. Brighton, because I guess they live in Brighton. And then in fourth place, Sunderland. Sunderland, 91% optimistic. Are they right? They're also ahead of Man United, who are in fifth. Are they right? 86% optimistic. Man United fans, these are big questions that maybe we'll certainly be trying to address in the course of today's show. We'll also be talking about other sides like Wolves and West Ham, who are kind of down there, stroke up there with Newcastle fans in terms of pessimism. We have one here in the studio, Tim. How are you feeling?
Not very optimistic at all, really. It's the least excited I've been about season for 10 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what happened 10 years ago with
sort of middle-of-the-road championship. Steve Morgan was about to sell the club a year before we came in. We were just treading water, and that's what's happening now.
Would you take treading water this season?
Yeah, and I think that's what the club are aiming for as well.
Right.
It's all very depressing.
Okay. Daniel, how optimistic are you? Did we get that from you on Tuesday? I don't think we did.
I think even neutrals would say Forest are maybe the hardest team to pick this season in terms of where they'll finish, which ironically means everyone picks them to finish 12th because they don't really know. Fans will be happy with 15th in a really good European run. I'm not sure whether Mr. Marinakis would be quite on board with that. So there's potential for it to blow up, and there's potential for Forest to sign loads of players between now and the end of August and be the 8th or 9th best team in the country, but it could be anywhere.
Nuno Mendes capping off a 4-3 penalty win after a 2-2 draw in the European Super Cup, which took place Wednesday night at the Stadio Friuli in Udine. An evening of surprises this. Firstly, because I'd forgotten entirely about Richarlison. He popped up. And secondly, because his new teammate Mo Kudus and Spurs in general, in their first proper game under Thomas Frank, had Champions League winners PSG absolutely on the ropes for 85 minutes. They didn't get the title, and they're probably not that bothered because it's the European Super Cup. But so many positives to take away from this performance.
Loads and loads of positives. I think the fact that Thomas Frank has made the defence better organised with a lower defensive line and better at both defending and attacking set pieces is of absolutely no surprise to anyone. But it was pronounced how quickly that's happened. The way they slowed down the game, the way that they took their time over set pieces, the way that they seemed to manage the situation pretty well until the final 10 minutes was really impressive and will serve them well. I think the game basically changed because, I think Frank got his substitutions wrong in that he brought off the players who seemed to have the most energy in Kudus and Paulinho and Richarlison. Maybe that suggests the lack of squad depth that he will look to address or persuade Spurs to address over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it was really good. I mean, Tottenham looked like a sensible football team tactically again, which I think is certainly what they're crying out for. I think maybe the sort of $1 million question of this season is how quickly or how much that's a complete antidote to last season for better and sometimes for worse in terms of excitement and fans kind of getting on board with this weird roller coaster train of Ange Postecoglou. But for now, it's the thing that makes the most sense for Spurs.
There will be those who, observing the fact that they were 2-0 up against Champions League winners PSG until the 85th minute and then blew it, will be reaching for the word Spursy, Tim.
Yeah, but so much has changed, like Daniel said. The fact that Thomas Frank had a game plan for one specific match, I know Postecoglou sort of did do that a bit towards the end of the season, but otherwise Postecoglou had a plan for the season and didn't bother with tactics. So to see Frank, with sort of 3-5-2, set pieces, Daniel says, the breaks, utilising the wing-backs, I thought were pretty good. And yeah, the subs were an issue. I mean, Tell's contribution was pretty much as bad as it gets. The numbers back that up, which are 8 touches, lost possession 4 times, no shots, gave 2 fouls away, completed 0 out of 3 dribbles and won 0 out of 4 ground duels.
And his penalty.
But he did win 1 header. So, it swings and roundabouts. But otherwise, I thought, yeah, if those subs had started the game, then maybe we would have seen a different result because none of them really contributed too much. But obviously, yeah, far more positives than negatives for Spurs.
Paris Saint-Germain breaking their losing streak against London clubs, which must be a relief. What they didn't look themselves, Tom. Was that because they've only just come back from their summer break?
I think there's a recognition that Tottenham played very well, and that, as Daniel and Tim were saying, set their stall out very well, clogged up the middle of the pitch, blocked PSG's fullbacks from getting forward with the wing-backs. But I think the main feeling in France was that PSG looked like a team playing their first pre-season game, which is exactly what they were. They had a handful of days off after the end of last season, flew straight out to the States for the Club World Cup, made it all the way to the final, playing with pretty much the same starting 11 in almost every game, then had 3 weeks holiday. And now they're back. They've had no pre-season. They've had 1 week of training. And you could see that. I think in the first half in particular, that the snap in the tackle that we came to associate with PSG last season wasn't there. The technical fluidity, the kind of confidence on the ball, a number of technical errors. They were miles off the levels that they hit last season and at times in the Club World Cup. And on top of that, the brand new goalkeeper basically chucks one in his own net early in the second half. So the fact that they managed to, equalise late in the game, I think the substitutes made a huge impact. Lee Kang-in obviously got the first goal. Gonzalo Ramos with the equaliser in stoppage time. It felt like the changes that their entrances prompted were also beneficial, with Ousmane Dembele going out to the right. And then they win the penalty shootout. And this is a trophy that no other French club have ever won. Last time PSG played in the European Super Cup, they lost 9-2 on aggregate to Juventus. And PSG are a club who don't have great European pedigree. So winning a trophy like this is meaningful. And also, I think had they lost off the back of losing against Chelsea in the Club World Cup final, would have been a pretty underwhelming start to the new season. So a lot of relief as well.
Next season, the Super Cup will be an 8-team affair played in Saudi.
Double-legged ties.
To be fair, that's exactly what the Spanish and the Italians have done with their domestic Super Cup. It's not 8, but 4 teams. But I mean, yeah, madness, isn't it? Donnarumma, Tom. How much did that? I mean, certainly the build-up to the game seemed to be totally dominated by, to what to most people is a pretty harsh bit of truth-telling by Luis Enrique to his Champions League hero goalkeeper.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that he wasn't even in the squad, this divorce, which has been on the cards for a little while. I mean, you go back to the middle of last season and the reporting was that there was a bit of an impasse in the contract talks between Donnarumma and PSG. They wanted to offer him a different kind of contract with a lower fixed salary element and more opportunity for making up the difference with bonuses. So there was already a bit of a standoff. We know that Luis Enrique, didn't ever really fancy him as a goalkeeper. Lucas Chevalier ticks a lot more of the boxes, primarily in terms of, being a lot better with the ball at his feet. But Donnarumma was one of the heroes of last season. I mean, you take Donnarumma out of that Champions League campaign, PSG you probably don't even get to the quarterfinals. I mean, he was so instrumental. Is, I think, a shoe-in for the Lev Yashin Trophy as the best goalkeeper in the world, and yet finds himself being binned off.
Are they going to regret that this season, do you think, Tom?
I mean, it depends how quickly Luc Chevalier finds his feet, and his development so far has been extremely linear. He's a very cool-headed, very unflappable goalkeeper who tends not to make many mistakes. So it's kind of unfortunate that he did make a fairly glaring mistake in his first game. But I think as long as he's able to handle all the attention, he should enable PSG to play even more of the kind of football that Luis Enrique wants to see. But obviously, if he does struggle at all, then that the decision to bin off Donnarumma is going to be
coming back to haunt Luis Enrique. Well, Vicario, from Thomas Frank's point of view, absolutely instrumental in then certainly taking the lead, and I think he'll be pretty happy with the Italian his Italian keeper's performance in this game. Broadly, Daniel, I don't know if you saw the previous Spurs outing in pre-season terms when they got absolutely canned 4-0 by Bayern Munich. So one hesitates perhaps to celebrate too much over Wednesday's performance. But were you feeling a lot more optimistic about Tottenham's prospects this season after this?
Yeah, I was. I do think that inevitably, I think inevitably at Tottenham, some things will change instantly, which is the organisation of the defence, which is the use of wing backs. I think Vicario's distribution to those wing backs, the kind of diagonal ball that for the wing back on running, looks really good. There will be occasions when that football is frustrating for supporters, I think. I'm talking about home games against low-line defences, of which they might almost certainly will face one this weekend in Burnley. That's where we work out whether there's enough creativity in the final third with this setup, or whether it just leads to players feeling they have to overcommit and then getting caught on the counter. That's the big question. Frank's obviously got lots of time on his side. I don't think we're looking at a Nuno situation where it'll go badly wrong very quickly, because I think he's savvy enough to see the quick improvements to be made. I don't think Spurs will finish in the top 5 or 6 this season, but then I don't think for a team that finished 17th and has Champions League to deal with, I don't think that's a realistic prospect anyway. So as long as everybody is engaged with that incremental process, I think it's fine.
Fair enough. One last thing on this from me, which is Eze going to be joining Spurs? Where are we with that?
He's got a release clause which Spurs apparently aren't willing to reach at the moment, which is very Daniel Levy.
Right.
I think he'd be a great addition. It's just what they need in the post sort of Madison era, and with Kulusevski still out. Just have to mention, I think, one of the worst penalties that I've ever seen from Vitinha, which just in the technique that he utilised, kind of that sort of haunched, sticking his arse out and sort of shuffling towards the ball, and then Vicario goes the other way, but he still puts it wide of the far post. What players trying to achieve now?
I don't know, because Matthias Tells was in some ways similar in that he took a long run up, stuttered a couple of times, got the goalkeeper going the other way, and then put it wide himself.
No, exactly. But you do see that a little bit, the sort of stutter run up. But Vitinha was just sort of, reminded me of, when you've been on a long drive, like three hours, maybe 4, and then you get to a motorway service station,
right? And
you sort of, creak out of the car, and then there's that sort of
sciatica,
stunted walk to the service station where you can't quite stand up properly, and your joints are all sort of discombobulated. That's what he was moving like. What's the point of that? What's that got to do with penalties?
See, I mean, the thing is, those penalties, when they work, they're brilliant because they're unsavable. When they don't work, you look foolish indeed.
Thin line.
A thin line.
Yeah. Brand new season. Everyone's very excited, including Tim. And part of the reason for that is 3 new sides to play with. Sunderland have been away, frankly, too long. Burnley, perhaps not been away long enough. And Leeds, who've had a couple of seasons out of the top flight. What's it going to be like for them this season? Is it going to be another case of straight back down? We shall see. Robin writes in. Robin says, the promoted trio looks stronger than usual and have done some good business so far. Leeds and Sunderland have genuine quality in midfield with Tanaka, Stach, Lefay and Diarra, so should stay up. Well, Leeds and Burnley, you recall last season in the Championship, both got 100 points and both have managers who've blown up previously in the Premier League. But it is the playoff winners, Sunderland, who've really, I think, grabbed everyone's attention, not least thanks to their massive summer of transfer spending. Chris Weatherspoon is a Mackem and The Athletic's football finance writer, so he's ideally placed, really, to tell us what the Black Cats have been up to. And he joins us now. Chris, hello.
Hi, James.
Chris, first off, was it 8 years since you were last in the Premier League? I bet it feels longer as well.
8 very long years. Yes, that's right. Yeah, we've, it's kind of, there's clubs, there's always someone worse off, but it isn't an exaggeration to say that the 4-year spell in the midst of that 8 years was the worst spell in Sunderland's history. They'd only ever spent 1 year outside the top 2 divisions in their history before that, and then they spent 4 in a row. So yes, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, really, because we were down in the depths. It felt like we were perhaps never getting out, and then we've kind of zoomed through. We've kind of waved bye-bye to everyone in the Championship very quickly, whereas you see a lot of teams get stuck there, and I would be remiss as a football finance writer not to say it's a disaster financially if you get stuck in the Championship. So we've done quite well to get in and out within 3 years.
Well, you must have seen some things down there, some dark days, but 8 years on, here you are, back in the Premier League after securing promotion in very dramatic style at Wembley. And we were hearing before, Sunderland fans really, really positive about your prospects this season. Are they right to be?
I guess the caveat is that any promoted team, there's probably a limit to how much optimism you can have. I think the kind of refreshing thing is that the business, the club have done this. Basically, they're not going to die wondering. You know, they're not going to. They haven't come up and they're not just going to be there to make the numbers up. Now, you know, it may well be the case that they don't do that well. We don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think it will be for the want to try, in which, you know, that's kind of all you can ask for, really. And I think it's probably the positive element of it, and the surprise. There has been that element of surprise, because actually, in order to get promoted, they haven't really spent that much money. You know, like the team that played at Wembley. I think the team that started at Wembley cost less than £10 million to assemble, whereas now, obviously, they've gone way beyond that. I think they're at about 125 million now, and that's without any like future add-ons and stuff. So I think there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of, because everyone knew, you know, like as euphoric as that last minute playoff final winner was, I think when the dust settled, it was kind of like, oh, let's not think about next season for a little while, because it's going to be really difficult. So everyone knew that there was a lot of work to be done, and there would need to be money spent. And I think it's probably just, it's been kind of refreshing that actually they've done it in a way that stayed true to what got them here. They've spent money on Granit Xhaka, and they've spent money on a new centre half who's 28 years old. But other than that, it's all been on young players, which is what they'd spent money on previously. So they've ramped up how much they're spending, but they've also stayed true to what they were doing previously. So I think cautious optimism.
Okay. How did Granit Xhaka come about? Who convinced him to head to the Stadium of Light?
I think it depends who you believe, really. I think the ownership and like the football hierarchy at the club kind of have a vision about how they want to do things and how they want to play. And I get the feeling with Xhaka they've probably pitched it as, look, like you can come and you'll be in a really significant like leadership position. Like actually, just this morning, Thursday morning, they've announced him as the new captain, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth for the last captain who did a pretty good job and got them promoted. But yes, so I think they've really, he's kind of like, he's the fulcrum. He's going to be the guy who everyone looks to, both on and off the pitch. And I think, it's, I think anything we know about Granit Xhaka is he likes a challenge, both literally and metaphorically. And I think he's going to get both on the side.
Robin Roofs, if that's how to pronounce, the new goalkeeper who's highly rated. Simon Adingra from Brighton, who sounds very exciting. Mark Gui from Chelsea. Tom, somebody you might be able to tell us a bit more about. Habib Diarra from Strasbourg, who's going to line up possibly alongside Granit in what looks like a pretty excellent midfield.
Yeah, very exciting, very attack-minded number 8, I suppose. Someone who carries the ball really well. He tends to pick it up in deep positions and kind of power into opposition territory. He's got an eye for goals. One of the goals for Senegal in their friendly win over England in the summer. And I mean, like a lot of the players at Strasbourg, looked like he was destined for bigger and better things, and looks like the kind of player who is well suited to Premier League football.
Magnificent. All right, so loads of positives. What's the big fear then, Chris?
Doing a Southampton. Is that the vernacular for it? Yeah, I think the concern really is actually Sunderland got pretty favourable opening fixtures. As favourable as you could hope to get as a promoted side.
Right, West Ham this weekend.
Yeah, so they got West Ham, then they go to Burnley, then they got Brentford, then they got Palace, and I know Palace obviously haven't really spent anything yet, but they're obviously still a good side. But they've got the opportunity to get some points on the board early, which I think is pretty key. I mean, having watched several Sunderland relegation seasons in the past, they've all had the theme of not really winning any of the opening games. And I think the problem this time around is if that happens, it's just a big opportunity passed up. Like they've got a really horrible kind of November, December. It's not going to be very festive on Wearside, I don't think. They've got a horrible run of fixtures around then. So they need to get points on the board early. So I think the concern is, if they don't hit the ground running. Now, obviously, they've been very active. They've signed 11 players already. A couple have only just come in the last week or so, but they have had time to mould quite a few of them. And I think they had to move quickly. Not least because, obviously, they were the last team to get promoted, so they had a shorter window anyway. But I think that probably feeds into the positivity thing, that they appear to have had a clear plan and they've gone and acted on it. But I do think the concern is they need to hit the ground running early.
Right.
Because we've seen it with promoted clubs in the last couple of years. Like once you get behind, it's very, very difficult to catch up.
One of those December fixtures, because the visit of Newcastle to the Stadium of Light. Woof. Looking forward to that one, Chris.
I'm not too sure about that. You see, I've got quite a lot of Newcastle supporting friends for my sins. And we always get back together at Christmas. I mean, we might have to postpone that one this year. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Magnificent. Chris, thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to seeing how Sunderland get on this weekend at home to West Ham. Magnificent.
Thanks, guys.
Most French club in the Premier League, Sunderland, Tom, is that right? With the ownership and the manager, Regis Lebris.
Yes, Regis Lebris and Kirill Louis Dreyfus, the 27-year-old owner.
Madness.
Multiple French players, multiple French-speaking players.
How is he at 27 years of age owning a Premier League club?
Because he comes from football club owning dynasty. He is the son of Robert Louis Dreyfus, who was the owner of Marseille, and his wife Margarita Louis Dreyfus, who took over from her late husband as Marseille owner. So he's got it in his blood.
Boom.
Ousmane Dembélé. One of Sunderland's many celebrity fans.
Oh, yeah?
Who is a friend of Kirill Louis Dreyfus's, and who has been seen at least once at the Stadium of Light, and who sent them a congratulatory message after they won the playoff final.
He's not had much top-flight managerial experience.
No, he hasn't. Yeah, and it was a punt. I mean, he carved out a very good reputation with Lorient in Ligue 1. They played very good football and had a lot of young players, but he got them relegated. And I think there was a bit of sneering in France. It was like, oh, yeah, well, he talks a good game and, they knock it around nicely, but, he's taken them down.
Right.
Then he gets picked up by Sunderland at a time
I love you using that PFM accent for French punditry.
Well,
is there a kind of Gallic version of the PFM?
There probably is, but I'm not sure I could do it while speaking English.
All right, anyway.
I'll work on it.
On to your point.
But yeah, him getting picked up by Sunderland felt like a bit of a punt by Sunderland in the first place. And also... came at a time when there weren't many French coaches, and there aren't many French coaches working at the highest levels of the European game. The only coaches in Europe's top 4 leagues this season will be Lebris and Patrick Vieira at Genoa. But he made a really good impression at Sunderland really quickly, spoke very good English, seemed to get on board with his players very quickly, got a lot of buy-in from them, was working with a younger squad in the Championship as well, so they kind of context he was used to working in, made them very adaptable tactically, so he's not kind of super dogmatic, my way or the highway, lots of kind of interesting and quite creative tactical tweaks from one match to the next. And flying the flag for French coaches at a time when there aren't many, flag-bearing French coaches around.
So there's all this excitement about Sunderland, and they have been away the longest of the three. Do they strike you, Daniel, as the likeliest of the promoted sides to have a good run? Or would you like to segue neatly onto the prospects for Leeds and Burnley, both of whom racked up 100 points last season in the Championship, but both, as I referenced before, come in with managers who've crashed and burned in spectacular fashion last time each of them tried their hand at Premier League seasons?
I think Sunderland are the unknown quantity, which in 3 weeks may make them the most likely to stay up, or in 3 weeks might make them the least. The concern is the same concerns I have for Leeds and Burnley, which is I just don't see where the goals are going to come from. If you look at the three squads as it stands as we record, the top scorer from last season at any club, at each of the promoted clubs, so Joel Pirot for Leeds, Zian Fleming for Burnley, and Wilson Isidore for Sunderland. And Pirot got the most goals last season of those, with 15 in the Championship. I just don't see... Burnley have signed Armando Broja, Leeds have signed Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Sunderland signed Mark Guiu. I just don't see where the goals are going to come from. So unless one or all or two of them are very good at sharing those goals around and get midfielders to chip in with at least 7 or 8 Premier League goals, then I think it's very hard for them to stay up, because, statement of the obvious, the Premier League attacks are going to be a world above the Championship attacks they faced last season. In the case of Burnley, they conceded a ridiculous 16 goals in 46 Championship games last season, but that's just not going to happen this season. You are going to concede goals, probably history suggests, at a rate of at least 1.5 a game. I think the best defence of the promoted clubs in the last 2 years is Burnley's in 2 years ago, and they conceded 70. So you're having to significantly improve that unless you're going to score 50 goals. And I just don't see at the moment. I know Leeds scored an absolute barrel load in the Championship, but Daniel James was Championship Player of the Year last year, and we've already seen him in the Premier League. He's exciting and he's good, and I think he has improved, but he was also became quite easy to marshal. I just don't know where the goals are going to come from any of them.
Very valid concern. As regards shipping lots of goals in the Premier League, of course, last time Parker was up at Bournemouth, he was famously in charge for that 9-0 defeat to Liverpool, although not for much longer afterwards. Farker as well owns the worst losing streak in managerial history in the Premier League, 16 defeats in a row, spread out admittedly over 2 seasons with Norwich. Your take, Tim?
I think Leeds have got the best chance of staying up, but they've got a decent front three. But as Daniel says, it's Nonto and James either side of Pirot. So yeah, you sort of know what you're going to get.
Right.
I mean, just to kind of put sort of Sunderland's task into context, we say Leeds and Burnley are obviously going to struggle to stay up despite getting 100 points last year. Well, Sunderland got 76 points, but they also only scored 58 goals last season. Leeds scored 95. If you only just reached halfway to 100 goals as a promoted team in the Championship, so to ask them to replicate the number of goals that they're going to need to stay up is such a huge ask. I mean, it's great to have them back. I think they'll be entertaining, Sunderland. They'll possibly be the sort of most entertaining team. They're very used to not having the ball. 26% in the possession in the playoff semis against Coventry away last season, and they won that game. But I love. It's great to have Sunderland back as a sort of a spectacle and as a football fan. They sold out for the first game against West Ham in a day. They sold out all their season tickets, sold 100,000 shirts. They had the 9th highest attendances in the country last season in the Championship. They're just a great club to have back in. And if they can kind of channel that every game is an FA Cup final type thing and really have the crowd with them, and enthusiasm is very high in Sunderland at the moment, then they will cause a few surprises. But once that sort of enthusiasm and momentum wears off, I don't see that they have the quality to stay up, unfortunately.
It's a great lineup, I think, this season. James, just across the board. 3 big historic northern clubs coming up from the Championship, redressing the north-south imbalance that we saw last season. The only thing that I find slightly problematic is I think there are too many teams whose name begins with the letter B.
Yes.
Bournemouth, Brentford, Brighton and Burnley.
What's the issue there, Tom?
Just too many. Spread it out a bit. We haven't got any teams whose name begins with the letter,
Well, you can pick.
Here we go.
Really, Daniel. Did you want to come in on that, or perhaps another
Two
topic?
more.
Come in with a letter, Daniel. Come on.
I'll start with a number. Two more slightly negative points here. The first thing is I understand why people say Leeds and Burnley got 100 points in the Championship, but the last 6 teams to get 90 or more points in the Championship have finished 19th, 20th, 19th, 20th, 18th, 19th. So it doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to be any good in the Premier League, unfortunately. And I think the other thing is that the money spent is a really good thing, but the money has changed. The numbers have changed on money spent over the last years. Ipswich spent £110 million last season on new players, and it didn't actually make them a good enough team to stay up. And I think Kieran McKenna is an excellent coach. So the odds are still stacked against them. I'm really glad that fans are optimistic, because the worst thing about the last couple of years is that some of those clubs who have come up have immediately felt like, we're not even going to really try, we're probably going to go down and we'll take the money. And that's a bit of a shame. I admire that there is optimism. That's definitely better than the alternative. But I hope it doesn't create an expectation, because the odds are still so heavily stacked against those 3.
This is what pre-season previews are all about, isn't it? Killing optimism with stats.
Kicking.
Right.
That's what we're here for. Looking forward to the season, are you guys? Well, let me give you 7 different statistical reasons why you shouldn't be.
Tom, on the subject of letters, I'm intrigued by DC and L, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and his arrival at Ellen Road on a free. Does that make sense somewhere?
It makes sense in that he's Patrick Bamford's very obvious replacement in an injury-prone striker whose best years are behind him.
Right.
But otherwise,
Okay. What about Kyle Walker at Burnley? Are you any happier with that one?
yeah, I think that's a really good addition. I mean, they lost a couple of key players from their incredible defence last season. Obviously, James Trafford being one. He's probably him and Xhaka are 2 really good additions for promoted teams. And I do like. I think Burnley will do well to learn from their past 2 experiences of relegation, which I think they have. Sean Dyche was sort of brutal Dyche ball, and then obviously Burnley was so open under Company, and Scott Parker has sort of taken or tried to take the best of those 2. They are defence first, obviously, but they do still play. They play it from the back. They play decent football. I think they'll probably be the most boring team to watch. I've no excitement.
Do you remember his Fulham side, who set a record for least home goals in the Premier League in the 2021 season? How many home goals did they have? 9 goals.
That is some going. That is a real commitment to not entertain your season ticket holders.
Yeah.
They won't stand for that in that big fancy new stand this season.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's luckily at Burnley, of course. What's your prediction then for the bottom 3? Daniel?
It will surprise absolutely nobody that I'm saying Leeds, Burnley and Sunderland, which I would say, and it plays into this idea of optimism. I think last year everybody would have predicted the 3 to go down. I think this year there is, I've seen people saying, well, Leeds are big, so they'll stay up, or Sunderland and Spence, they'll stay up. I haven't seen so much about Burnley, but fine. I think there is a feeling that they can. I just don't think they will.
I'm going to say Burnley, Sunderland and West Ham United
because you looked at Tim as you were saying it. I thought you were going to go
And
Wolves.
he started with a W as well.
Yeah.
But that would have been a real...
Yeah, maybe you feel there are too
move.
many teams beginning with W in the Premier League, and could there be one less at the end of this season, Tim?
Well, I'm going to please Tom and get rid of a B. In fact, 2 Bs.
Thank goodness.
And the Bs. Because I think Brentford might go.
Brentford down, and the other 2?
Burnley and Sunderland.
Transfer news. This week's hot stories are Liverpool closing in on young Parma defender Giovanni Leone. Young Lions, pretty much means. Exciting that. A lot of money. It's probably going to have gone through by the time you hear this, listener. They're talking about, I think, 40 million euros for the 18-year-old who's pretty much only played half a season in the top flight, but had one extremely good game against Romelu Lukaku. Man mark him at the game. He's physical, is Leone. You might say that many people could mark Romelu Lukaku out of a game. And if you haven't seen Lukaku for a while, I'd understand that. But he actually had a good season last time out. So anyway, Giovanni Leone, very, very highly rated. And that could be a big, big signing for Liverpool. Why have Al Hilal paid Alexander Mitrovic 25 million to leave? And who should sign him?
Pretty much every team should sign him, including his former club Newcastle. I think it'd be a great signing for them, given their desperate need of a striker.
Not an Eddie Howe player, obviously.
No, but then he does play for a club owned by their owners, and they do really desperately need a striker, and he has played there before, and he has been successful in the Premier League before, and I think he is one of those players who has kept himself towards the top of his game in the Saudi Pro League, which isn't the case with everybody. I think he'd be a great signing for everyone. He's just causes nuisance. I think he'd be a brilliant signing for Forest. I think he'd be a brilliant signing for West Ham. Any of those teams who need a striker, he would be great for. Yes, there are the issues about temperament, but to be honest, talking of Newcastle, Eddie Howe's been really good at managing players and bringing them together as part of that team, Alexander Isak, Claxton notwithstanding. I think everyone should be after Mitrovic. The issue is the reported wages he's on in the SPL, which is, it was 400 grand a week. I wonder if maybe my theory would be that the 25 million is to say, yeah, you're probably not going to get even half these wages elsewhere. So if we make it easy for you to leave financially, would you take a lower wage offer?
Very nice. Okay, more on that when we know more. Let's get on to more Premier League position predicting type thing. And having done the promoted sides, I guess we've got to address the big Man United question. Last season, they ended 15th. They followed that up with a postseason tour of Asia, which featured a 1-0 defeat to a Malaysian selection in Kuala Lumpur. Lots of Malays for Man United. Since then, though, all smiles. They've spent 200 million on a whole new front line. They've had a proper pre-season with their manager. So are they going to behave like a proper club again this season? Well, to answer that question, we dialed up Laurie Whitwell, who was off on their pre-season tour of the United States. And he spoke to us a short while ago. Laurie, big season ahead for Ruben Amorim and Manchester United. You were on their tour of the United States. Have they resolved the problems?
Well, let's see. I think they've certainly tried to remedy some of the problems, the biggest one being scoring goals. They scored 44 in the Premier League last season, which was a pretty abysmal total for a club of United stature and standing. And so they have gone and brought Brian Mbeumo. They've gone and bought Mateus Cunha, two players that scored 20 goals and 15 goals in the Premier League last season. So basically almost matching United's entire team total. And then added on top Benjamin Sesko, who has been a hot prospect in Europe for several years now. United have looked at him since he was 16, and they brought him to the club now at the age of 22, hoping that he can translate some of that form, some of that promise that he's been showing in Germany across to the English Premier League. So, I think they've tried to remedy it, but equally there's still some issues. Central midfield is one that was a problem last season, maybe even the goalkeeping situation. But they're obviously having discussions with Carlos Baleba at the moment to see if that can be a signing that sorts that situation out. Okay, so a bunch of money spent up front, but we're here in mid-August still with Onana in goal, still with Casemiro lining up alongside Bruno in midfield, a bunch of players in a bomb squad who were meant to be on their way, and one or two with other issues as well, possibly at the back. Has Ruben Amorim got the players to play his kind of football, the kind of progressive centre halves? What are the other issues that still stood out for you in the United States? Yeah, I mean, the game against Everton was one where United were, they probably were the better team, but I think Everton certainly gave them problems. They created quite a few chances, and it was the direct balls, it was the second balls, and so Amorim sort of acknowledged that, and I do wonder if that's going to be a kind of consistent problem throughout the season, sort of having that, that dynamism in midfield, that mobility at the back, because they do have players, in central defence. There's obviously three central defenders now. They can play a fullback in there. Mazraoui's played there, or Dalot maybe. Luke Shaw's been playing there as a left-sided centre half. They've got Lisandro Martinez to come back. He is good at breaking the lines with his passes. That's the kind of crucial element to the defence. But I think it's still not quite settled in terms of who his best selection is there. So sorting that out. I think the Onana situation might rumble on. It seems to me that they're not going to go for a goalkeeper because he's not going to go anywhere, and they can't make a signing in that case. But yeah, if they're obviously trying this ambitious move for Baleba, they haven't made a bid yet. Maybe that could transform the midfield if he comes in, because he's got that energy, he's got that sort of drive and that ability to carry the ball from defence to attack. But yeah, so there's still definitely issues to solve there.
So we're a couple of days out from the start of a critical season for the manager, for the club, and a really tough opening fixture. Arsenal at Old Trafford, where United only won 7 times in all of last season, and it's still very much a work in progress for all the big signings. Then, what are the positives?
I think the fact that they've got this sort of change of mood around the place. Certainly, that's what I felt when I was over there in America. You could see the training sessions to a degree. I know they're going to put on a kind of United happy front, but then speaking to people that were closer to it, at the team hotel at the Waldorf Astoria, very glamorous location in central Chicago, there was a genuine feeling that this was a happy bunch, that they were all wanting to play for United, which is clearly why the bomb squad, as you referenced earlier, that they're out the picture. But yeah, let's see when the results actually start coming, because it's kind of fairly straightforward to be positive about the situation now. Ruben Amorim's got new players in. It's a kind of bunch of players that want to do much better than they did last season. So I think that's certainly a positive, that kind of willingness to perform better. And certainly actually the physicality that they showed against West Ham, against Bournemouth, 3 teams that finished above them in the Premier League last season were in this Premier League Summer Series over in America, and they didn't, they went unbeaten, 2 wins and a draw. And then certainly in the first 2 matches, they showed some good speed, good aggressive pressing up top. So I think that's maybe an indication that with training sessions, with proper time to work with his players, Amorim can get good results. All
in all, though, some decent results against mid-table teams from last season in pre-season friendlies, and the fact that players might actually want to turn up for work this season, it's quite thin gruel. What represents success for United this season after their 15th place last time around?
Big question, that really, isn't it? Because ordinarily you'd suggest that anything below the Champions League places for United would be a failure. They're clearly adjusting perspectives, and I mean, I've spoken to people that even to the top half finish, they'd be sort of satisfied with just after the disaster of last season. I think ultimately what Amorim is saying, what all the players are saying, is Europe. They have to return to some form of European competition, not only for the prestige, but also for the bank balance, for the broadcast revenue that comes in, even by being in the Europa League. Clearly, beyond that, the Champions League would be a huge boost for them, with 5 teams qualifying for it now pretty much. They've got that opening there. I did actually put that proposition to Mason Mount, who spoke to us in Chicago, because he'd sort of said, yeah, Europe's the aim. And I said, what about Champions League? And he kind of went, oh, no, Europe's the aim, sort of to kind of make sure that there wasn't too lofty ambition, which is crazy, really, when you think about United and the titles they've won. Obviously under Sir Alex Ferguson, they never finished below 3rd, and they were kind of always in the title hunt. So for them to kind of now be talking as if, 7th or 6th would be good enough, it does show the change in perspective. But I suppose if United really are adamant about sticking with Ruben Amorim and making this system, making this football structure work, they will probably have to experience more pain to get there.
So not back yet, Laurie, that's the verdict.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, I'm withholding all judgment on United, because I've seen this story before where I've thought, even under Erik ten Hag, when they finished 3rd, you sort of thought, okay, they're building something here, and then disaster strikes, and then they finish 8th. 8th this season, people might be happy with, and that was what obviously brought everyone to point fingers at Erik ten Hag and say he was so fortunate to survive after the FA Cup final victory. So, yeah, I think certainly not back yet. We'll wait until they've played some matches in real competition first.
Thank you so much, Laurie.
Nice one. Cheers, guys.
Laurie Whitwell. Daniel, what do you think? Are the Manchester United days over?
Yeah, to an extent, I think. I don't think it's still the same back 5 or back 6, and it's going to be a central midfield with not enough energy unless they spend £100 million on Carlos Baleba. So I've not got them any higher than 7th, but I think that lack of European football means that 7th is an eminent possibility.
Okay, Tom?
I think top 10.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I think the difficulty for Amorim is that United have to be significantly better than they were last season from the start. I think he's betting in new players. He's betting in an entire forward line. But he's had the best part of a year to work with most of these players now.
Right.
And there's this, we heard, quite a lot after he came in that it was going to take time to drill these players on this new system. And while there is an element of truth in that, when Thomas Tuchel went to Chelsea at the end of the 2020-21 season,
Right.
he got them playing successfully in a back three in the space of 1 week.
Thomas Frank at Spurs. They look like a well-coached team now.
This is the thing. A good coach who knows how to get his ideas across shouldn't need an entire year or the best part of to introduce a new system. And the additional difficulty is that United's opening fixtures are
brutal.
Very, very difficult.
Let's hear them. They play Arsenal, Man City and Chelsea in their first 5 matches. What are the other 2 games?
Away to Brentford, home to Sunderland, away to Liverpool.
I mean, those are certainly fixtures, aren't they? All right. Somewhere in the top 10, you've got them, Tim.
Yeah, in the mix for top 10, maybe just outside. The front 3 editions are obviously very, very good. But I thought they had a great summer last year, to be honest. But they've got, if you look at, there was a table doing the rounds recently of their top 10 most expensive signings, of which, 3 are this summer. Most of them have completely flopped, So yeah, the signings look good on paper, but there's something wrong with that club, be it a toxic dressing room or the recruitment team or the way that they're managed, where their new signings...
The roof as well.
The roof. It doesn't work for whatever reason. And good additions, but they needed to prioritise different areas of the team. I think the team is still built on sand. They've still got Onana in goal. I'm not convinced about the defence. Casemiro is still the DM.
Right.
The Dallo is still at wing back. I'm not convinced by any of those players. So how can you say that they're going to, challenge for Europe?
Shh. That's the sound of Man United optimism and Tim's cold water pouring all over it.
I know with that hopeometer, but the Man United fans that I know are not that optimistic.
Are they not?
They say sort of maybe 8th, 9th at best.
Bournemouth, who kicked things off against Liverpool on Friday. Villa will be in action Saturday lunchtime, hosting Newcastle. You got Brighton against Fulham at 3 on Saturday, Sunderland, West Ham, Spurs, Burnley, and at 5:30, Wolves against Manchester City. Sunday at 2 o'clock, Chelsea Palace and Forest Brentford. At 4:30, Man United Arsenal. Woof. Then we'll be doing a pod straight after that. Oh, we're going to be live streaming it? Yes, we're going to be live streaming it. So if you fancy some live streamed very hot takes on the Premier League weekend and you don't want to wait around till your Monday morning, round about 6:30 on Sunday, it's on YouTube. What are the big questions for the rest of the Premier League? Who's going to do a Forest? Who's going to be in trouble if one of the promoted sides stay up?
I think broadly the most interesting question surrounds the next 2 weeks, quite frankly. I think we've seen this summer that there is that the big 6, traditional big 6, have been able to spend heavily and the promoted clubs have tried to spend heavily. And between that, there is a mass of clubs who have either lost players or are net negative or have struggled to bring players in. I think for a whole host of clubs, I include Forest, Brentford, Bournemouth and Palace and West Ham in this, maybe Wolves as well. The issue, I think, is that 15 to 20 million used to be the fee you paid to get a decent player in. And that's now shifted this summer, I think, to kind of 30, 35 million. And that takes a lot more due diligence. It takes up a lot more of your PSR wiggle room. And so clubs are kind of waiting and seeing. I think we're seeing dominoes waiting to fall with certain major moves. But how that next 2 weeks goes really could affect the whole season. Like Newcastle are really a good example because they're sort of further down the process in that everybody loses their minds and they're top of the pessimism table. And then they sign Malik Thiaw. We here probably will sign Jacob Ramsey. They've signed Anthony Elanga. Things can change so much over the next 2 weeks. But there are some clubs in there. Bournemouth rebuilding the defence. Brentford rebuilding the attack. West Ham trying to lower the average age and get a creative player now Kudus has gone. There are clubs with an awful lot to do. And Tim will probably talk about Wolves, but they are one of them. That if they don't, then it feels like 14th is the ceiling.
Tom asks, can Wolves break Derby's 11-point record low? Tom says, not this Tom. This is another Tom who's written in. No plan, no ambition, no hope. Welcome to the Black Country. Yikes.
No, come on. I'm sorry. I'm not having that. It's okay. It's not very optimistic. Obviously Cunha went early, June the 1st. Mm-hmm. Aït-Nouri went early. 100 million for those two.
Right.
We're all kind of expecting that to be spent fairly quickly on really good replacements. they've just plugged those 2 gaps. That's pretty much all they've done. They've got the fantastically named David Muller-Wolf is a left wing back. He's also got a wolf tattoo.
Brilliant.
And he sort of was joking around a couple of years ago that Wolves would be a good team for him to join. It's just great. It's right. It fits.
But is he going to play with Wolf on the back of his shirt? I did a bit of research on this yesterday, and at his previous clubs, I think he wore Muller-Wolf. I mean, it's obviously his name, so that's fair enough. But
you talk about puncturing optimism. This is the one thing I'm really looking forward to.
But is it? I mean, I just because a Wolf shirt with just Wolf on the back, worn by a guy whose name is Wolf with a Wolf tattoo.
If he puts Muller on, it'd be a wolf in Muller's clothing.
It would.
Right. He would be the first Wolf with an E on the end to play for Wolves since John de Wolf 30 years ago.
Yeah, what a guy. Yeah, great guy. Real cool hero he was. I had the pleasure of interviewing him a couple of years ago in Amsterdam in 2019. And he had the long hair, the goatee, the long throws, the Wolf name.
All right.
He was great fun. They've also, talking of fun, they've signed John Arias as well.
John Arias, spelt in a challenging fashion.
Yeah, he is. He's tripped up a few people already with his John spelling. But yeah, he'll be fun. But if you look at he's 27. If you look at his career history in Brazil, he's not going to put up the kind of numbers that Mateus Cunha did last season.
Okay.
So there are issues there.
He looked great in the Club World Cup.
He did. He did. I think he'll be good fun. He'll be entertaining. But I think Wolves should stay up because the spine of their team would walk into any of the newly promoted teams. For example, Jose Sarr in goal, Agbadou, who's one of the better defenders of the second half of last season in the Premier League. Still got João Gomez and Andre in midfield, 2 excellent Brazilian midfielders, and Jürgen Strand-Larsen up front, who scored 14 goals last year. And as Daniel's pointed out, are any of the newly promoted teams going to have a striker anywhere near that sort of goal ratio? So I think Wolves will stay up, but that's their only ambition, it also feels to me at the moment. And when you're circling the drain and you're only aiming for sort of 15th maximum, then you will go at some point, but I don't think it'll be this year.
Okay. Ander asks, what are Everton? David Moyes, Big Ladney, Barry up front, one of the best players among the non-European sides in Iliman and Jai, a new stadium, yet they still feel kind of iffy overall, says Ander, who possibly wrote this before Jack Grealish rocked up. Are they bottom 5 fodder? Can they become the Premier League's 7th team again? Bit scattergun, this Ander. What? He finishes off with just what?
What is an Everton? I think Everton could have a good season.
Are they the side you're most excited to see this opening weekend?
I wouldn't go that far.
I think they are for me.
I mean,
Grealish.
Yeah, I mean, for fans of players who play with their socks rolled down and in for an absolute treat at Hill Dickinson Stadium this season. So you got Grealish and Iliman and Ndiaye and Kiernan Dewsbury Hall.
They're trying to sign Tyler Diblin.
And they're trying to sign Tyler Diblin.
Yeah.
Ultimate, it's like, okay, we're taking a big step into the future with this shiny new stadium, but we haven't forgotten where we've come from. We're signing players who play with their socks rolled down.
I like it. Who Everton playing this weekend?
They are at Leeds Monday night, and then home to Brighton a week Sunday for the first game at the new stadium. But look, David Moyes had a huge impact last season. They hit a fantastic run of form, which tailed off a little bit right at the end of the season when it was clear that they were safe. They haven't lost too many key. I mean, Abdoulaye Doucouré has moved on, but they've got Ndiaye, they've got Grealish, might have Tyler Dibbling as well. Spent a bit of money. Tieno Barry coming in from Villarreal, so they got a new centre forward. The excitement of moving into a new stadium. I think that the shift to the stadium will be a factor, and we know from recent Premier League history that clubs always take a bit of time to find their feet, and Goodison presented a very particular challenge for visiting teams that Everton harnessed, in their good times exceptionally well, and they're going to need to find a relationship and build a relationship with this new stadium, and that probably will take time. But I think there is a momentum there. I think they have made some good signings. You feel like there's always excitement about a new stadium, but I think with the signings as well and the kind of momentum they found last season, I think they should be optimistic.
Who's going to do a Forest this season in terms of not stitching up South London rivals for a place in Europe, but making a real concerted run for European positions and even challenging at times for the top 4? Do you see a club doing that?
I mean, there's lots of contenders. I mean, the story of last season was the emergence of this, pretty substantial middle class kind of bubbling around between kind of 5th, 6th and mid-table. I fancy Brighton again have a good season.
Same.
Yeah.
They signed an awful lot of players a year ago. They had a brand new, famously young coach in Fabian Hürzeler, and the first half of the season was very up and down. They did hit a bit of form in the second half of the season. They beat some good sides, and it's been a little bit quieter this season. Some changes in the back line, but I can see Brighton kicking on.
Okay.
Well, they've done what they needed to, as in defensive additions is what they were screaming out for. They needed a new Lewis Dunk. They may have got him in Diogo Coppola from Verona, just broke into the Italy team last season. There's a lot of buzz about the 2 Greek youngsters they've signed, Simas and Kostelas, who haven't really featured in pre-season, but they've spent a lot of money on them. I think it was 30 million on Kostelas, who only sort of broke into the Olympiacos team last season. But Tom mentions the players they bought last summer when they spent 200 million. They were all aged 20. They were all aged 19 to 25, designed to get better. And Matt O'Reilly, who they got from Celtic, he sort of improved as last season went on.
He might not be there. There's a lot of talk that he might be at Juventus come the new season.
Interesting. Well, there are others. I mean, Minter and Mats Wiefer as well. Ruta, who they got from Leeds, he had a good season last season. You'd expect him to kick on. So, yeah, they were pretty close to Europe last season. I would expect them to be in Europe. All
right, Brighton. 2 votes for Brighton. Daniel?
I mean, my general hot take for this season is that it's a sort of replica of post 2015-16, which is when Leicester won the league and all the big clubs decided, right, we can't have that happening again. I kind of feel like with the business done this season and how some of those clubs have been raided, the same message has happened in that, right, we can't let all these upstarts start thinking that they can get in the top 5 or 6. So I don't know if it's a hot take at all, maybe it's the opposite, but I think the top 8 will be the big 6 plus Villa and Newcastle. So I think that they will kind of go back to that, not letting anyone in. I agree that Brighton are probably the most likely, but I think we're saying that because the other clubs haven't bought anyone yet or haven't replaced the players they've lost, so it's impossible to pick them. But yeah, I think the 8 will be the 8.
The 8 will be the 8. And Tom?
But then, as always happens at this time of year, there is a tendency to make our predictions and to look at the season through the prism of transfer dealings. And there have been examples in the past of teams who've done very little transfer business. That famous Mauricio Pochettino season at Tottenham.
Liverpool last year.
Liverpool last year as well. Like, if you've got the same players and you've maybe made 1 or 2 additions, there's no reason to think that you're going to be worse than you were. And there's a lot to be said for stability.
Who are you thinking, Tom? Give us a name.
Crystal Palace, Fulham. Teams who haven't signed many players.
Fulham have made a change. They signed a reserve goalkeeper.
Fulham have signed a reserve goalkeeper. Very important spot in any squad. But there's no reason to think that they will automatically have a worse season than they did last year just because they haven't strengthened. Another example.
Yeah, all right. Well, you know what? Daniel points out that meaningless as transfers may or may not be, there are 2 more weeks of them, which could significantly change the pictures in personnel terms ahead of, as the season progresses. So between that and the fact that we've all been rambling on for a bit, let's park.
Well, we should do it all again in 2 weeks once we know who everyone's signed.
Yeah, that's a great shout. Yeah. I'm sure we'll get the opportunity as we react to the many matches as they take place starting from tomorrow night and Liverpool-Bournemouth. Anyway, we're going to be live, actual human beings, Sunday evening, reviewing what the early games have told us. I bet everyone's going to go, well, you can't tell anything from 90 minutes and hedge and couch and all that kind of stuff. But there'll be some hot takes in there as well. Join us, as I say, listener, live on YouTube, or just hang around for Monday morning and we'll have the regular podcast nicely packaged up for you. But for now, it's many, many thanks to Chris Weatherspoon earlier on, Laurie Whitwell, to Tim and Tom and Daniel, producer Lucy, and you, listener. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football, and we'll catch up with you Sunday. Bye-bye for now. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.